Rise of the Triad first saw its release as a shareware title back in late 1994, with a full release coming along just a few months later. An FPS, or should I say Doom clone, considering the time in which it was released, that was developed by Apogee Software that often sees itself overshadowed and somewhat forgotten about, to be honest, in favour of their later release, Duke Nukem 3D, by which time Apogee had rebranded themselves into 3D Realms, just to avoid any confusion. Originally, it was being developed as a Wolfenstein 3D sequel, just called Wolfenstein 3D 2 Rise of the Triad. Bit of a mouthful, and there's a lot of this left over in the final game. I remember playing Rise of the Triad sometime in the late 90s or so, and not being especially good at it, being that I was quite young at the time, but it always stuck in my memory thanks to the sheer chaos that it delivered. An iOS re-release somehow happened in 2010, which we don't talk about, and there was a total remake in 2013, which we don't talk about much, outside of its killer soundtrack anyway. Now it's 2023, and thanks to the folks over at Night Dive Studios, who really kill it with their remasters lately, plus some assistance from New Blood Interactive, we have Rise of the Triad Ludicrous Edition, which was released on PC earlier in the year, and is now available on pretty much every modern system. I'm going to be looking at the PlayStation release for this video. Night Dive Studios have really gone out of their way to ensure that this is the definitive way to experience Rise of the Triad. 4K resolution, unlimited frame rates, many HUD options, lighting effects, multiple soundtracks available including the 2013 remakes, and a ton of mixing and matching you can do to create the perfect Rise of the Triad experience where you feel the most comfortable blowing up a bunch of cultists. Was anyone really asking for this? Probably not, but I'm certainly not complaining. They've even added some cut content, such as alternative sprites for enemies, and a bunch of new sound effects you can optionally activate as well. This is the sharpest, cleanest, and just outright prettiest way to play ROT without any of the presentation being truly compromised on any fundamental level. There's no mistake what you're playing or what era it belongs to. Improved visuals are a given in any remaster these days, but delving deep into the options is really what makes this a truly improved and modern experience, at least as modern as something like this can be. There's a number of accessibility options. You can choose what elements of modern gameplay and presentation you want to activate. It's not just one single switch between classic style and new remaster. There's even some balance changes you can pick from for the gameplay, such as nerfing the monks, which you can bet I'm going to keep activated. Packed in with this almost complete edition is the original shareware campaign, The Hunt Begins, the main release campaign, The Dark War, the expansion pack, Extreme Rot, which ups the difficulty a tad, and the brand new campaign, The Hunt Continues, which takes advantage of some of the new additions to the presentation. It's a really juicy amount of content to get through, but do note that this console version does not include a Doom mod version of ROT that is included in the PC release of the Ludicrous Edition. Whilst I'm on the subject, also missing are the map editor and all forms of multiplayer. Return of the Triad does run on a Doom-based engine, and the map editor I can see being awkward to get working for whatever reason on consoles, but no multiplayer either. That really does kinda suck. Generally speaking though, just looking at what we've got, this is still a great remaster that has clearly been developed with a lot of love for the original, and plenty of thought put into how to make this the definitive ROT experience, which it does succeed at. But if we put aside that this is a remaster for a second, what about the base game itself? Well, to start with, it's unapologetically old school, and this is a pretty faithful remaster, so don't expect that to change much. You're either going to see that as a warning or a primary selling point. Most early FPS tropes are on full display here, and if that isn't to your taste, you probably won't enjoy this no matter how many bells and whistles are added on. If you love this kind of thing, well then this one really is something else. The plot is skippable, as you'd expect. We've got an evil cult hiding out on San Nicolas Island off the coast of California. They plan to destroy LA, so you plan to destroy them. How an ancient evil cult dressed like World War II bad guys managed to find their way off the coast of California, I don't know, but it doesn't really matter. It's just an excuse for some total annihilation to take place. You play as a member of the high-risk United Nations Task Force, Hruntuf. Oh, wait, okay, Hunt. That does make more sense. There are 5 Hunt members that you can pick from to play. Pretty unique for the time to have multiple playable characters in an FPS. They even have different stats, so they feel a little bit different to play. Some are faster but a bit squishier, some are tankier but slower or less accurate. You get the idea. If, like me, you're not especially good at this kind of game, just go with the safe old-fashioned balanced option. You know, the one that's always at the very top of the list. Once you pick a campaign to play through, it's going to control pretty much as you expect. Nice modern controls means you can jump straight into the action. And if you've played Doom, then you'll definitely know what to do, right? Kill waves of bad guys, find some keys, open some doors, and get to the end of the level. And yeah, that's pretty much all here. But this is closer to being part Doom and part platformer, but with no jump button. Yeah, this is where Rise of the Triad really starts to stand out. So how do you platform without being able to jump? Well, you can jump, but only through jump pads on the floor. The other option is to recklessly sprint off a ledge and just hope it all works out. To make it even more platformer-y, if that's a word, we have some classic coin-style collectibles, which will grant you an extra life for every 100 you find. Now granted, there are some levels structured similarly to something you would find in Doom, but the majority have a lot of vertical elements, jumping around, going between moving platforms, avoiding traps, avoiding pits. You can even kill enemies by landing on them. Yeah, it's a platformer. Some levels you hardly see any enemies at all, it's all just platforming puzzles. This whole design philosophy certainly makes ROT stand out amongst its early 90s peers, but this all comes alongside a lot of the limitations you had from the time. The end result is you still get a lot of classic maze-like maps. A lot of the bigger levels end up feeling rather obtuse. I definitely spent a lot of time wandering around, trying to figure out where the hell to go, or what the game really wanted me to do. On the flip side, this does allow a lot of variety. Every level feels very different and jam-packed with secrets. One moment you can be in a 5-minute massacre, and then the next level is a 20-minute marathon of a maze. The next one you're spending 10 minutes jumping around like Mario. It's an A+ for creativity and originality, but the pacing can be quite jarring, and we are a little bit let down by the aesthetics. So many levels look the same visually, despite the differences in design. We're talking textures, colour palette, even the enemies are all pretty uniform from level to level in terms of how they look. I won't lie, my eyes were starting to get a little bit bored, but thankfully the pure insanity and absolute absurdity of the gameplay will alleviate a lot of that risk. You'll be mowing down enemies with one of the more unique arsenals available, and it never really ceases being a good time. The enemies can do some pretty cool stuff as well, like throw nets at you, they can even beg for their lives.
No, don't shoot, please! No, don't shoot!
They can play possum, then they'll get right back up just in time to shoot you in the back like a true coward. This gives the illusion of a more advanced AI than it actually has. And as cool as it is to see something like that happening in a game this old, most of your enemies are just going to stand out in the open and wait for a missile to render them down into ludicrous gibs. This game is gory and proud, maybe a little bit tame by modern standards, sure, but there's still nothing quite like seeing your enemy's eyeballs fly across the screen. Your basic weapons are some of the holdovers from its Wolfenstein days. 1 or 2 pistols and an MP40. Then you have one extra weapon slot available for one of the many special explosive weapons. Heat-seeking missiles, multi-missile launchers, even one where you fire the missile at the floor and it'll generate a giant wall of fire where it lands. That wall of fire will then move full steam ahead and annihilate anything in its path. Now there's a weapon that needs to find a way to make a comeback to the genre. These explosive weapons have limited ammo, and you can't find more ammo just sitting around on the floor. Instead, you'll just find new weapons, and you'll drop the current weapon you have in favour of the new one you find. My only small criticism here is it does make me wish for a few more of the basic weapons, as I do find my time mostly being spent with the infinite ammo MP40, either because I'm saving the big guns, or maybe I just don't have one at the time because I ran out of ammo. To be fair though, once things get crazy and you manage to keep up the pace, you'll be finding weapons and abilities everywhere, all the time. And yes, I said abilities because weapons and health are not the only pickups available in this Doom clone. You can gain flight, you can pick up God mode, complete with invincibility, and an instant kill magic spell called Godfire that you shoot out of your hands. And oh, we can't forget dog mode as well, where you turn into a dog and maul enemies to death, or charge up a bark that will cause them to explode. And I'm not being sarcastic, this is a very much real thing in the game. There's even some areas of the map that you can't get to unless you use dog mode. While you can find specific abilities laying around, a lot of the time it's a random one, and there are some less than useful abilities, like Elasto, where you bounce off the walls uncontrollably, and Shrooms, which sadly don't make you big like in Mario. So this does mean it is a bit of a gamble sometimes. So yeah, if you couldn't tell already, it's absolute chaos, and I haven't even mentioned the Excalibat yet. The game truly thrives when there's a ton of enemies on screen to unleash carnage upon. Difficulty can spike up and down without much of a pattern to it, which in addition to the wildly different level designs, create a bit of an uneven pace that feels as chaotic as its gameplay. Thankfully, the quick save feature completely cancels out the need for lives and game overs, even though the game features those. It does mean you can feel free to ramp up the difficulty in order to ensure some crazier combat. Why they didn't remove the life system from this remaster, considering how easy they are to work around, I'm not really sure, though I do guess there are probably going to be some purists out there that are going to want to beat the game the right way. Speaking of beating the game, there's even multiple endings. Well, only 2, but that still counts. Rise of the Triad Ludicrous Edition is the perfect way to experience the game, for both old and new players alike. As a remaster, this is about as good as it gets, so it really comes down to how well you get along with the base game. If you're a big fan of the original, then it's a must play. If you just love all the old classic Doom clones, then you'll probably have a good time here, but just understand what you're getting into with all the platforming and bizarre pacing and level structures. Honestly, I think that most people that meet the criteria for enjoying the game are likely going to favour getting the PC version over this console one. PC is likely where their love of the original or old school FPSs originated, which leaves the PlayStation version in a bit of a weird place. I still enjoyed it, but it is going to be a tougher sell to the wider console audience. There's a big chunk of content missing, making it not the total package that the PC offers, and is very much a product of its time. Don't get me wrong though, the console version is definitely not a bad experience, and I've always found it kind of fun to boot up a PS5 only to load up an old FPS like this.